So we've already talked, I just want to say a few words about the word Christ, because our talk today is the foundation to our Christ consciousness. And I just want to start out with, if you have resistance to that word, then just replace it with another word like enlightenment or universal mind or universal love, because that's what we're talking about. And that's what Jesus did. That's who Jesus was. He had that, he lived that, and he was our way shower of that. So Charles Fillmore was the co-founder of Unity, and he introduced the 12 powers of Christ consciousness. And they're also referred to as the 12 faculties or the 12 abilities. And we all have these powers, and we use them, but we don't necessarily use them consciously. So over the next 12 months, I get to talk once a month, and each month I'm going to talk about a different power. So we all have an opportunity to take that whole month to work on the power. So this month we're talking about faith. And we're talking about faith because it is the rock that Christ built, his church. As we study these powers, we get to build our lives and live our lives more fully, more consciously, more masterfully. And they serve that indwelling Christ. They serve that enlightened being that is within each and every one of us. That part of us that knows good all the time, the part of us that knows the right thing to do, or I shouldn't say right thing, I want to say the best thing, the thing that has the most positive outcome for our life. And the 12 powers within the Bible are symbolized by the 12 powers of Israel in the Old Testament and the 12 disciples in the New Testament. So the way Jesus needed and called upon and trained the 12 disciples, we need to call upon and train our disciple powers within us. So the 12 powers are faith, strength, wisdom, love, power is the voice, imagination, will, understanding, zeal, order, elimination, and life. And we're going to look at them separately, and we're also going to look at how they kind of work together. Winifred Wilkinson Hausman, in her book titled Your God-Given Potential, says, faith is the quality in us which enables us to look past appearances of lack, limitation, or difficulty, to take hold of the divine idea and believe in it, even though we do not see any evidence of it except in our minds. Through faith, we know with an inner knowing. The truth has not yet been expressed in our manifest world. So there are different levels of faith. We have faith at the level of the personality, which really goes along with and believes in the law of the land, like faith that when someone hands you an apple seed and they say that they're going to plant that, we know and we have faith that an apple seed is going to grow. So that's one form of faith from the personality level. And if in the personality, if you have an underdeveloped faith, your results are going to be results of distrust, results of misgiving, results with skepticism. And from the personality level, if you have an overdeveloped faith, you become dogmatic and narrow-minded. You may hear someone who's got an overdeveloped faith say things like, my mind is made up, don't confuse me with the facts. And that is from the personality level. But then from the spiritual level of elevated consciousness, faith is the ability to believe spiritually, to intuit, to perceive, to hear, and to have conviction without seeing it in the manifest world. So it's about visualizing abundance and knowing abundance when you really don't see it yet. Because like David says, everything is manifested already in the unmanifested world. We just have to allow it in. We just have to attract it to us or be attracted to it. It's all here already. So we can develop all of these abilities, all of these faculties we can develop, right? That's what, it's just like learning how to sing, right? We get better and better with practice. So we never lose our faith. We never don't have faith. Just sometimes we have forgotten to call upon it from that higher consciousness. We call upon it from a place of fear. We call upon it from a place of ego when we get lost in what's going on in the material world. There's a continuum of faith, and The first level of that is hope. Hope is like training wheels of faith. And it keeps our journey moving in the right direction, but it's also based in fear. It's based in what if it doesn't come true, or fear that something that I want or desire, I don't receive. So it's based in that. But in one of the actual definitions of faith is the assurance of all things hoped for. So it's actually part of the definition of faith. So that's the first level. The second level of faith is blind faith. And we don't know why or how we believe things will work out, though. This kind of blind faith is based in truth. We know that things are going to work out. And it wavers. We waver when we're in blind faith because sometimes if we don't see the results we want, we think, okay, it's not going to happen. But we always come back to that place of knowing everything is good. And there may be an abdication of power and responsibility because in blind faith, we believe that God is going to intervene. And I mean God from an outside place, not God from within. So as we grow from hope to blind faith, now we go to understanding faith. And this is where Jesus lived. This is where the higher consciousness of faith lives. And it's the highest level. We know and understand that there are immutable spiritual laws. And we know when we apply spiritual laws, we are assured of the results that follow. We take more responsibility for understanding the application of divine ideas and truths and principles and laws. And we see what is wanted and consciously use divine laws and principles in order to have it. And this is where Jesus taught from also. He just had that faith, and he was our teacher. So the power of faith is the first of the 12 powers. And like I said, it's the ability to believe spiritually, intuit, perceive, and to hear, and to have conviction. And the color of it is royal blue, and it lives in the pineal gland in the middle of your brain. And the apostle is Peter. And why is Peter the apostle? Why does Peter represent faith? Well, in Matthew chapter 16, verses 15 through 18, Jesus said to his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the powers of death shall not prevail against it." So the metaphysical interpretation of this verse, this chapter and verse, Simon was Peter's real name, was his God-given name. But in Greek, Simon means hearing and understanding, which is a sign of receptivity. And the story shows that listening to truth with a receptive state of mind opens the way for receiving the next degree of divine order, which is faith. Then the next line, flesh and blood does not reveal this to you. Well, that means that his mortal consciousness, Peter's mortal consciousness, did not reveal to him that you are the Christ, Son of the living God. But our Father who is in heaven, our Father, so that is Peter's highest consciousness, his heaven up in here, the God consciousness, where his belief, where his faith is coming from. That's where this thought is coming from for Peter. Then he goes on to say, and I tell you, you are Peter. So that's when he changed his name from Simon to Peter. Jesus said, okay, now you're going to be Peter. And in Greek, Peter means the rock and stone. It represents the ability of the mind to lay hold of and establish ideas of consciousness. Metaphysically, the rock symbolization is saying that our faith in God needs to be strong and unwavering. On this rock, I will build my church, this rock of faith. On Peter, the foundation. In Greek, the church is the Lord's house. So our Lord's house actually lives in our brain. And it's because our thoughts come from our brain and our mind. This whole thing kind of kept bringing up David Friedman, because faith is really about, we're supposed to have strong faith, but the only way we know we have strong faith is when doubts and fears come and we say, oh, wait a minute, that's not the truth. So our thoughts have to be the guard over what's going on in our life to say, and that's where the skill of developing our faith comes from, knowing we're going to have doubts, we're going to have fears, but saying, well, no, I have faith in God, I have faith in good, and we are going to overcome that. Faith Oh, wait, let's go on. The powers of death shall not prevail against it. Death is not real. It does not exist. It has no power over who we really are. It has no power over the Christ mind, over the enlightened mind. Death is only about our body. It's not about who we truly are. It's not about our Christ consciousness. So faith quickens spiritual understanding. Peter recognized the Christ in Jesus, and the same Christ indwells in every one of us. Peter's faith opened his spiritual discernment. In the revealing word, faith is defined as it is the necessary foundation for the building of a spiritual consciousness, the church of Christ in the individual. So we all build our spiritual consciousness on our faith. So to summarize, Peter's name was Simon, which means hearing and understanding. As we listen and are receptive to spiritual dimensions of life, and as we begin to understand and to obey our inner thoughts instead of opinions of others or instead of the thoughts of our ego, there comes a point where faith overthrows indecision and searching. Simon becomes Peter, and upon his faith, the indwelling Christ, we proceed to build our life and live from that place. Faith is the central faculty in the consciousness of a master. Jesus said upon this, he would build his church. Now, Peter wavered in his faith, right? Steadfastness of faith is developed through love, though. And Peter wavered because many times he wasn't established in love. He was established in the material world. He was established in his ego. So he continued to concentrate on the carnal world or on the physical world and all of the limited ideas that he could possibly think of. And an example was in Matthew 14:28-34, when Jesus walked on water towards the disciples in the boat, and Peter said to him, if you're really Jesus, if you're not a figment of our imagination, let me walk on water. And Peter walked on water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and he began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. To walk on water of troubled thought without sinking for all of us in our lives requires the establishment of faith in Jesus and in the saving power of spirit. Peter represents faith in its varying stages of development. As we go through our days and our lives, in every adversity, we either have faith in God and ask to be shown the way, or we think of all the possible adversities, become afraid, and begin to sink, begin to go down that spiral, go down that drain. It is our thinking faculty that is the first to be considered, directed, trained, developed, and guarded. It is the inlet and outlet of our ideas. So that's why we start with faith, because that's where our thoughts come from. That's where everything begins, right? That's what we learn here at Unity. Our thinking and our thoughts are our church. Our thinking faculty is always active, zealous, impulsive, but yet not always wise. If our thoughts go unguarded or unsupervised, they can create unruly negativity and all sorts of discord. Our thinking faculty food is divine ideas or ideas, just like the fishes in the Bible represent ideas. And Jesus always says, cast the net on the right side. Well, the right side means always on the side of truth. So when we have our ideas, make sure that they're filled with truth. Jesus knew Peter like a book. He knew that the faculty of faith was versatile and apt and frequently changed its base. This faculty must continually be taught to center on true words and truth. Peter was the perfect disciple for this faculty because he wavered in his faith, but yet came back over and over again. To not be a slave to our thinking brain, command it to be still and know that I am God. Stand in the center of your being and say, I and the Father are one. I am one with God. So one of the tools that we can use to help grow our faith is to meditate, is to be still, is to allow ourselves to quiet so that we can hear the still small voice within us of God. I have a couple of things I want to read from the Holy Spirit's interpretation of the New Testament. And it's actually the verse that I first read, Matthew 16, chapter 16, verses 15 through 18. The Spirit of God is one, and his Son is one with him. There is no separateness. There is only the Father and his extension of himself, which is his Son. In this way, the Spirit of God is one and is whole. It is on your faith in my word that I shall build my church. It is on your willingness to believe me over what you see that I will heal your sight. It is oneness that you seek, and so it is the truth that you shall find. You are blessed in your search. That which is forever true cannot be overcome. This instruction given to Peter is given to all who put faith in me. For Peter is but a symbol of faith within the unhealed mind. What this mind holds onto is held onto within heaven, for the truth is always true. And what this mind lets go of is let go of in heaven, for the truth is always true. Jesus is not the Christ in himself. The Christ is the Son of God, and no one is left outside of Christ. Peter is the symbol of faith within the unhealed mind. And so Peter is also the symbol of the unhealed mind that has faith. In Peter, you will see great faith. And in Peter, you will see doubt and fear and confusion. You are Peter. I am Peter. Until we know that we are the Son of God, do not doubt that you are Peter. And so you will seem to have moments of great faith, and you will seem to have moments of doubt, fear, and confusion. It is the doubt, fear, and confusion you must let go of, for they block the light of heaven and the awareness of who you are. It is faith you must hold on to, for your faith is your path to me. Jesus was enlightened, for he knew what heaven is, and his joy he invited all to join him. All of us, you and I, everybody here. And the final verse, it is simple. If you accept me and let all else go, you shall know me. In knowing me, you shall know life and truth. For I am life and truth. In this knowing, in this knowledge, you cannot die. Life and truth are the opposite of death, because life and truth are everything, and death, like fear, is nothing. So, the powers that go along with faith, because faith is coming from our mind, we have to have strength. And that's what we're going to talk about next month. But we have to have strength. We have to have tenacity to keep coming back to knowing we are God, knowing we are one with God, knowing the goodness of who and what we are. And then to cultivate faith, to sustain it, it has to be developed from love. We have to come from that place of love. And again, that's from the joy within our heart. So, as you go today from here, just remember that when you have doubts and fear, that's your red flag to call on God, to call on your faith, to call on the remembering of what is true. Because what is true, and it cannot be anything else. Thank you. Wow.